Hello everyone, good afternoon. I hope you can all hear me now. Priyadharshini ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Yes ma'am, fine. Hi everyone and good afternoon. So we'll be starting the session now. So very good afternoon to all the participants of today's INLIT webinar series on Journey Towards a New Dawn. Though journey is one of the redundant comparisons to life, no journey of two persons is identical. Differs in purpose, motive factors, experience, individual perception, and many more. Irrespective of these, every human life is destined for a journey. By now, some of us might be progressing in our journey, and some of us wouldn't even have thought about starting one. You don't have to be great to smart, but you have to start to be great. So do it without no delay. Let every dawn be the beginning of life, and every setting sun its close. Remember to ask yourself in the journey if what you're doing today is getting you closer to where you want to be tomorrow. And don't forget to turn around somewhere in the journey and enjoy the view. INLIT Academy takes immense pleasure in presenting today's resource person, a vibrant personality, Dr. Priyadharshini, to share thought provoking and enlightening adventures through her presentation. Ma'am's academic, professional, and personal journey has shaped her as an inspiring teacher, a writer, and moreover, a good hearted human. Dr. Priyadharshini holds certification in MSc Applied Psychology, Business English, Communication from the University of Cambridge, and several others from Wesleyan University, Johns Hopkins University, Arizona State University, and the University of London. As a teacher, moral instructor, and a writer, Ma'am has assisted, guided, and counseled young learners in their curricular and moral being. She has organized, participated, and judged various seminars, guest lectures, symposiums, workshops, conference, intercollegiate meets, and published several research papers as well. Soft skills and placement class training, technical and business English are to be mentioned along with her expertise on other literary genres. Let me ping you all again. As Einstein has said, a ship is always safe at the shore, but that's not what it's built for. Be ready to set sail and best wishes for a wonderful journey. Over to you, Dr. Priyadharshini ma'am.
I give all praise and glory to my Lord Jesus Christ for giving me this opportunity to address this August gathering. Ron sir, I thank you so much for that wonderful introduction about me. So warm greetings to one and all present here. Life is a journey with problems to solve and lessons to learn. But most important of all, experiences to enjoy. So life's journey, okay, it's filled with a lot of struggles. We have to face a lot of difficulties. As Ron sir told, no two persons' journey is the same. So, paraphrasing these words of Mr. Samir Rasool, I present before you all the title of today's talk, Journey Towards a New Dawn, in the novels of the Asian American duo Amy Tan and Jhumpal Agri. So, I hope the PPT is clear.
Yes, ma'am. Can you go full screen, ma'am? PPT.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So, in
We'll start.
today's lecture, yes, sir, I'll begin. Thank you. So, in today's lecture, based on the novels of the two writers, let's see how the characters in the novels of Tan and Lagri they face struggle, overcome them, and start a new journey. So the title itself will convey the crux of today's lecture, that is, the characters in the two novels are facing some kind of struggle. So let's see what that struggle is. So in order for a better understanding, I have categorized today's presentation into 5 subdivisions. First one is titled as the Imprints of Invention, which inscribes the initiatives of Asian exiles to America in creating a literature of their own titled the Asian American Literature. To be precise, the emergence of Asian American literature is what I'm going to share with you all under Imprints of Invention. Next is darkness of dissonance. This is the second subdivision, which says that every individual residing in this world has a purpose. So nobody can say that our life is futile. We have come into this earth not knowing the meaning of our life. Every soul which is sent in the earth has got a purpose. The Creator has a predestined purpose for the soul. So, in order to excavate that purpose, or to discover the purpose, we have to disembark our journey through darkness as destined by the Creator. So, what is darkness here? Every time we cannot say that our life will be smooth, we have to face struggles in various spheres of our life. So, that is what is called as darkness here. So, darkness of dissonance presents the problem of identity among the immigrants, who are the cardinal characters of the two novelists, Amitan and Jumpalagri. So, the title itself explains the problem clearly. Dissonance here means the conflicts seen in the personal identity and relationship realms of the immigrants. So, as I told you earlier, every one of us has a problem to face in life, but the characters in these two novels taken for study, they face identity crisis, and they also come across conflicts in their relationship realms. So Amitan and Jhumpa Lagri, who themselves were immigrants to America, portrays the difficulties of immigration, and they reflect them through their characters. So the next subdivision, recitation of resilience, it says that every right path in life is distinguished by a rough road. So each one of us in life has to go through difficulties in order to reach our destination. So I told you earlier what are the difficulties the characters of the two Asian American novelists face. Let me repeat it again for you. One is the problem of identity. To tell it in simple terms, just in case imagine that you are immigrating to a new country. Will you not face identity crisis there? Certainly yes, we will to a very great extent. It's because we are all non-natives to that new place, where we are, uprooted from our own motherland and planted again in a completely new ambience. So, amidst the new people who may or perhaps may not be hostile, to prove our mettle and establish our identity is quite a difficult task initially. So, this is one problem, which some characters of the two writers face. Going to a new school, leaving our old school, and starting to begin work in a new place, leaving our own old work environment. Okay, it all creates some kind of anxiety in us. Why? Because we have to encounter new faces, right from our colleagues or be it classmates. They are all new to us. So, amidst those people, to prove our mettle, to exhibit our talents and show who we are is quite a tedious task initially. Once we get adapted to the place, it becomes easy. But initially, in order to exhibit who we are and you know to root our identity there is very crucial in the beginning stages. So just imagine going to a new country. It's quite difficult, isn't it? So this is what the people there also, that is the immigrants also face. First is the identity crisis, and the next is a very important crisis which we all experience or would have experienced inside our family. So that is the conflict with our intimate relations. Uh, it can be with our parents or, even with our life partner. To be very precise, let me again explain this with an example. So, once again, imagine yourself in a scenario where in a new country, you beget children and they all grow in the new ambience. You, as a first generation immigrant, will certainly miss your homeland, its culture, and tradition in the long run. But what about your children who are born in that new country? For them, the country which appears alien to you is what they consider as their motherland. They do not know what is India, its rich culture, unless and until you tell them or they themselves experience it in person. But in spite of you trying to put your Indian culture into practice and instill the same inside them, it continues to remain strange to them as the influence of the foreign culture would be more predominant. So it can be from their peers, school, or workplace. Their bicultural brought up, at some point of time can result in their identity crisis as well. And it can also create conflicts in their relationship with parents because the parents they belong to an alien culture, that is the native culture of their motherland, but the children who were born in the American soil, they are all completely Americans, they long for complete assimilation. So there the conflict begins. And it can also be through generation gaps, so none of us can say that we haven't experienced conflicts with our parents. It's because of the generation gap. So here also what happens when the parents, okay, we'll address them as the elder generation, parents as the elder generation, they hold firmly to their native tradition, and the younger generation longs for assimilation into the realms of the foreign land. So this is where the conflict, which is termed as dissonance, begins. So this cultural dissonance, okay, and in simpler terms, it's called as a conflict existing in the characters of the two novelists is what is resolved in the next division, that is uh, recitation of resilience. So resilience, what does it mean? That is the mental hardness which we possess in times of adversity is what we call as resilience. For example, take the example of a rubber band. If you pull both the ends to a very great extent and if you leave the rubber band, it again bounces back to its original position. So this is what also similarly happens with us. Resilience is a very popular topic in psychology. It's about talks about the mental capacity of a person, to face struggles in life and how well we bounce back to our normal life is called as a resilience. So you may ask me what is resilience has to do in resolving the conflicts. Yes, it plays a very important role in accordance with the characters present in the two novels. I mean, in the novels of the two writers, the elder generation, that is, who all migrated to America, except Ashima, a prominent character in the novel namesake, all the others, they have encountered a very perilous past in their native place, be it China or India, and hiding that past, they have entered into America in order to begin a new life. So when this past, is presented to their children, there the transformation begins because the children they try to empathize with the struggles of their parents and they negotiate terms with them, and finally, the conflicts are resolved. So the next section, okay, which is titled as the miracle of mysteries, each character they undergo a sudden transformation which is addressed as a miracle. Mysteries refer to the concealed past of the elders in the novel, which is once again brought to the contemplation of the younger generation in order to facilitate a transformation. So we have the final segment, that is the shaft of the sunrise. It ruminates around the revival attained by the characters in their individual self and in the relationship realms. So finally, closing the clamorous doors in their immigrant abode forever. So now, with this brief introduction about today's scheme of presentation, I'm passing to the next topic, that is imprints of invention. So, like how the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Similarly, literature is also an exemplary resemblance of humanity. The upsurge of literature is apparent in its immense vastness as it expands widely in diverse forms to embrace different human thoughts and its change in terms of period and progress. So, as you all know, the emergence of the American literature it dates back to the European exploration and colonization. And the stagnation of many immigrants in America. Okay, it paved way for the integration of diverse customs and traditions into its culture. And America, like today, in those days also, it appeared, to be a dreamland of prosperity and wealth to many people. So I'm working in an engineering college. If I ask my students, what is your plan after completing an engineering? They all give me different replies telling, one will say I want to go to America, the other will say I want to settle in United Kingdom. So the fascination for foreign countries, has not even ceased even in the present scenario. So a huge amount of people, okay, like today, in those days also, a huge amount of people from various countries, they landed in the American soil in search of a better livelihood. And Asians too moved to America on a large scale. So it was not only for better livelihood, there are also other reasons, predominant reasons, which is present for the immigration of the Asian people to America. So let's see that in detail in the further slides. So the immigrants, who left their native country to settle in America, they carried their native tradition and cultural practices along with them and started to implement the same in the United States. So this is why even today, the United States of America shines brighter with the influence of multiculturalism. And places like New Jersey, New York, California, Boston, and Florida, they are noted as the hub of multiculturalism because these are places where immigrants from different countries around the world reside here in a large number. So, therefore, the United States of America became immune to multiculturalism as days passed on. So, initially, they were not, able to take up this multicultural setup. But as days passed on, United States became flexible to multiculturalism. And the collage of various nationalities into the American sphere conceived an assemblage of Americans, hyphenated Americans, like African Americans or Caribbean Americans, Asian Americans, and many more. So now let's see in detail what were the triggering factors for the Asian people to leave their country and move towards America. So before we go into that, imprints of invention, that is, it says that the literary works of the Asian American people shimmers with the influence of how they invented their own identity. So when you call it as Asian American, it is not completely American nor Asian fully. So it's a mixed identity which they developed this in the long run. Okay, after so many struggles. So let's see what are the struggles. So before going into this the struggles in detail, this is the definition of the Asian American literature by E.D. Huntley, which I already told you. Okay, Asian American writers will have to that is have Asian ancestry, and they will be residing in America, wherein they view the world with dual lenses of their American identities and their Asian ethnic roots. So now let's see what made the Asian people to move from their own country towards America. So the United States of America is a mighty nation, which created a new literature of its own, in turn, which attracted settlers through descriptions about its exotic landscapes. And the second reason for many Asians to opt for America for the settlement is trade. US had firmly erected her trade and monopoly in the Asian market, and United States was also rich in natural resources like India. Okay, like India, United States also in those days was very rich in natural resources, which demanded cheap labor for its excavation, especially in the sugarcane plantations. So, owing to the growing demand of labor, what happened is even South Asians they immigrated to the United States, and even British invasions. Okay, like the Opium Wars, which was fought in China, it plundered the wealth of the entire country. So people did not have means of survival. So with the hope of leading a better life, constructing a better life, they started to immigrate to the United States. So a large scale immigration was taking place, which resulted in the hostility of the native people. And the immigrants also experienced severe physical and racial discrimination. But on the other hand, they were not passive. Okay, they didn't take it up very lightly. And one fine day, they started to voice out for their rights. They stood up for their rights. You know how? By boycotting the American goods in the Asian market. So, which in turn led to the decline of America in trade and monopoly. So, gradually over the years, America retrieved all her rules against Asians, and this paved way for the invention of the Asian American identity. So, the writings of the early Asian American literature are filled with these discussed issues. So, this slides presents to you in a chronological order how Asian American literature came into existence. So, first, it was due to the trade. America was very popular in trading with the Asian countries. And because of her popularity of trade with the Asian countries, Asian laborers were initially, brought to America in order to excavate its rich natural resource. And trade was not the only reason. British invasion, which looted the country of its wealth, forced many people to move out of the country. So, growing to the demand of labor, South Asian immigrants also came to the United States, and this evoked the hostility of the natives. Why? Because the Native Americans, they started to lose their job opportunities. The Asian people, they were willing to work for low wages for quite a long hours. So the Native Americans naturally lost their job opportunities. Unemployment was predominant among the Native Americans. So this aroused their antagonism, that is hatred. And finally, it led to the physical abuse of the Asian immigrants. There was also racial discrimination, but the Asian immigrants were not passive, they demanded for their rights. And finally, they evolved a new identity called as the Asian American identity, which is reflected in their literary portraits. So we'll just take a look at the early Asian American writers, that is Liang Po and Chiang Yi. Okay, when I was a boy in China and a Chinese childhood, these two books were very popular. Why? Because it started, to portray, give a picture of China to the Western people. And Li Yu Tang also evolved a new style of writing. He was called as the elucidator of China to the West. He also gave a good picture of China to the American readers. Along with that, he started to incorporate humor. So the next slide tells you these are some of the prominent works of the early Asian American literature. That is The Vigil of a Nation, The Chinese Way of Life, The Chinese Theory of Art, then History of Press and Public Opinion, Chinatown Family, and The Flower Drum Song. Next, significant early women writers. Okay, so the narrative record of the Asian American literature embellished significantly with the blooming of women writers in its grasslands. So these are some of the significant women writers. Edith and Winfred, they are called as the Eurasian sisters, and Edith, Anner, and Mimi. And one prominent writer in this group is Jade Snow. Jade Snow's Fifth Chinese Daughter is an important book. Why? Because when other writers praised China, she, on the other hand, in a very peculiar manner, she condemned the Asian minorities, telling that they did not progress in America because of their own laziness, and she started to bestow praise on the American life. And Maxine Hong Kingston is another prominent women writer in the early Asian American literature. She is well known for her rendition, that is a non-linear narrative. It follows a non-linear narrative pattern, that is the women warrior. So it acclaimed, it got wide fame, and wherein she explains about the maturation of a Chinese girl surrounded by patriarchy and racial suppression. So the early writers wrote about their homeland, its tradition and culture. But on the other hand, these writings were restrained in such a way not to evoke the anger of the Americans. But the second generation writers focused exclusively on immigration and its impacts, such as identity crisis, racial and gender discrimination and conflict of cultures. So they wrote fictions and memos infusing history and imagination. So now, and these are some of the recent trends in Asian American literature. So this I've told you earlier, cultural clashes, then experience of the first and second generation immigrants. Finally, we have microaggression. So let's see what microaggression is. So it's a term, it's used to brief any commonplace verbal or behavioral indignities which is attributed against any marginalized group, not only blacks but also any marginalized groups in the present scenario like LGBT, poor people, or whoever it is. So this term was also coined by a psychiatrist and a Harvard University professor, Chester M. Pierce, in 1970. So these are some of the phrases which gives you all a clear idea about a microaggression. So just read through the phrases. What are you? I never see you as a black girl. Why do you sound white? Why are you so white? You are really pretty for a dark skinned girl. So these phrases, though outwardly they appear to be, they take the form of appreciation, there is some kind of punch inside them in order to degrade the black community. So Batma Venkatraman is another famous and a contemporary Asian American novelist who, in her novel that is A Time to Dance, she has spoken explicitly about microaggression. So now, coming to the subject of immigration, it can be compared to the birth of an infant in this earth. That is, the few minutes of an infant's birth is very crucial, as you all know, where with profound perseverance it cries out loudly. And this first cry of the infant marks the beginning of his or her adjustment in this earth. So this can be, compared to the concept of immigration also, which is exclusively handled by the two women novelists, Amy Tan and Jhumpa Lahiri, who themselves are second generation immigrants. So both Tan and Lahiri were born to immigrant parents. Their biographies vary, and but their experiences in America collide with each other, which in turn is exhibited in their respective fictions. So their fictions are explicit portraits of immigration and its influence on family and relationships, which can affect identity, individual space, create alienation, or it can also cause cultural displacement. So these are the novels of Amitan. So just read through them. The Jailer Club, The Kitchen Guard's Wife, The Hundred Secret Senses, The Bone Setter's Daughter, Saving Fish from Drowning, Rules for Virgins, and The Valley of Amazement. She's also written some amount of considerable children's literature works too, that is The Moon Lady and Sagwa, the Chinese Siamese Cat. So among all her non-fiction works, The Opposite of Fate, which is a book of musings, is very important. So Amy Tan, she got influenced to write because of the relationship between her parents. She had lot of generation conflicts, especially with her mother, and she has portrayed all these themes in her works. Next one, she was also a voracious reader right from her young age, and the stories told by her grandmother was also another important, influence which enabled Amy Tan to produce good fictions. So they are the contemporaries of Amy Tan: Maxine Honk, Lisa C., Celeste Lahiri, Anne Shi Min, then Chung Lee, Viet Tan Mugen, and Catherine Chung. So now let's take a look of Lahiri's works. First one, she's very famous for this work, Interpreter of Maladies, because it's won the Pulitzer Prize. And next is The Accustomed Earth. These are two short story collections. And she's written two novels, that is The Namesake and The Lowland. And Lahiri has also the capability of writing in Italian, which is translated into English under the title In Other Words. So literary influences of Lahiri were Alice Munro, Leo Tolstoy, Nabokov, Henry Dubus, Richard Yates, and Anton Chekhov. So Bharati Mukherjee, Chitra Banerjee, Khalid Hosseini, Mira Jacob, and Tripti Umriga are Jhumpa Lakhri's contemporaries. So you may have this question, why did I choose these two writers for an analysis? It's because their works, portray the mentioned themes in a very beautiful way. That is unification of the past and present and mother-daughter bond. Then it also tells that how secrets can affect a generation also, like how we call the skeletons in the cupboard. Next, there's also interplay of fate and individual's choice in one life. Then she gives voice to the ancestors. For example, if you take books like The Kitchen God's Wife and The Joiler Club, she portrays the struggle which her own mother and her grandmother underwent. So those voiceless souls, they didn't have an opportunity to voice it out and get justice. But Amitan does it for them. Then her books, offer interesting glimpses into Chinese culture. And the last theme was very appealing to me, that is reconstruction of life. So every individual in life, we may face many struggles which can even fragment us to the very extent. But how well we reconstruct our life and start again is what is can be called as the crux of our entire living. Next, regarding Amitan, she has got deep commitment towards, I'm sorry, regarding Jhumpa Lagri, she's got deep commitment towards human relationships. And she analyzes in detail the generation gap between parents and children. And she also represents people, who have lost their life. And she also says how well they are reconstructing it or re-establishing their life once again. Next one, this writer, especially Lahiri, she takes immense curiosity in observing the Vela, human Vela, which is present inside every individual. In one of the interviews, she has told that her characters, sometimes, for example, the Lowland, Gauri, the prominent character in the novel, she has traveled out of the hands of Lahiri and she has even shocked her own creator, that is Jhumpa Lahiri, because this writer has she creates an environment uh, which is very painful, and she observes how a women characters excel in such a type of an environment, exhibiting their valor. And of course the predominant theme is immigration in both writers. Then love is also another important theme, and this I told you earlier, they explore the growth of women in an exotic land. So these are the common themes of both the writers, that is familial relationships, alienation, individuality, cultural displacement, first and second generation conflicts, then growth of women in an exotic land, identity, and cross cultural experience. So, based on these themes, I have taken 5 novels for study, that is The Joiler Club, The Kitchen Guard's Wife, The Hundred Secret Senses, The Namesake, and The Lowland. So it's important to have a glimpse on the brief summary of each novel before we get into the analysis. So Joiler Club is a piercing, poignant, and insightful story of 4 mothers and their daughters. The novel carries interconnected stories expressing the mother-daughter disagreement with cultural and generational disparity, where the daughters, they characterize their mothers as archaic, who belong to an old world, and overpowering and even threatening. In turn, the mothers are agitated because of the daughters' misperception over their native culture, and the mothers also observe that when many of the daughters, not everyone, but many of the daughters, they have a very unhealthy familial livelihood, and they have learned to take contentment in monotonous jobs. Next one, Kitchen God's Wife. Winnie and Helen, they have kept worst secrets for more than 50 years. So, this is what I told you earlier, how a secret can affect a generation itself. So, now because she believes that she's dying, Helen wants to expose everything, and Winnie angrily determines that she must be the one to tell her daughter Pearl. about the past, including the terrible truth even Helen did not know. So there begins Winnie's story. Next one, we have the 100 Secret Senses. It captures the cultural displacement with pangs of alienation. And it's also a very interesting novel which talks about reincarnation, where Qian, okay, she belongs to China. She takes a rebirth. Why? Because in her previous birth, she has distorted her sister's love life. So she wants to set that right. And in order to do that, she again takes a rebirth. And there is also, you find lot of siblings rivalry in this novel, where Olivia Bishop, she's an American born Chinese and a very passionate commercial photographer in profession, but she completely shuns her sister's old ideas, that is Qian's old thoughts of China. So, but when the mystery is revealed to her, it smoothens Olivia's American pragmatism, and she accepts her past and present and reinvents her identity. So, next one is The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. So, The Namesake, many of you would have read this novel because it's a very famous work. It takes the Ganguly family from their tradition bound life in Calcutta and transform them as Americans. So, on the heels of their arranged wedding, these two protagonists, Ashok and Ashima, they settle together in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Then Ashima, an immigrant to America, resists all things that is American and she pines for her family. So the real struggle is set forth in the novel only when their son is named after a Russian writer by their Indian parents in memory of a catastrophe which happened years before. Here, what happens is Gokul really suffers the burden of his heritage and he also encounters quite a lot of identity crisis. So Lahiri brings a great empathy to Gokul as he stumbles in reinventing his identity. So we have the last novel, that is The Lowland. This novel, it's got it revolves around familial ties between two brothers. That is Udayan, a charismatic and he's a very impulsive person who finds himself drawn to the Naxalite movement, and he risks everything, at the cost of his life. That is his newly married pregnant wife, his brother, and their parents. So his actions resound through generations that follow, where Subhash marries his brother's wife Gauri and serves as a foster father to his brother's daughter, hiding the secret long after the departure of Gauri in search of a new life. So this is just a small summary of all the novels which I told you now. So before we go for a research, so we have to always look for the essence in all the novels which we selected. So the predominant theme which was present in all these novels taken for study is conflict, identity, because conflict in relationships, it can be marital relationships or with the parents. And next one is the identity crisis, which in turn, hampers the harmony or a peaceful life. So the main conflict is it's between the first generation and the second generation. So this section, that is a darkness of dissonance, it highlights the tensions existing between the mothers and daughters, siblings, parents and children, and finally the disagreements in marital life. So the first two novels, that is The Joiler Club and The Kitchen God's Wife, the mothers and their respective daughters, the relationship between the mothers and the daughters is greatly strained due to cultural clash. The mothers or the elder generation, they embrace China, and on the contrary, the daughters, who are the younger generation, they clasp the culture of America tightly. So this cultural tension, this leads to the identity crisis. As I told you earlier, it also disturbs the harmony in marital relationships as well. So the next novel, The 100 Secret Senses, negotiates sisterhood amidst the cross-cultural tensions. That is Olivia Bishop, a typical American in the San Francisco soil. Okay, she is in conflict with her half sister Qian, a complete contradiction in culture and lifestyle to her. So it's very difficult for us to get along with people who don't have our own preferences. Like, how do we form best friends? You just can't go sit beside a person and say he or she is my best friend. You can't do that. A best friend is whom where you find your own self reflected in them. But Olivia, okay, when it comes to her sister, uh, she is repulsive about all the cultural practices of Cuban. So she's not able to accept that. And Cuban also interferes into Olivia's affairs. So this Olivia doesn't like. So due to the interference of Cuban, okay, who is also a symbolic representation of China, they experience conflict in identity and marital life, which proved to be a nidus of darkness. You can ask me, how does interference create identity crisis in Olivia? For that, you have to read the novel clearly. Only then you will have a better understanding. Next, that is Namesake, the novel Namesake. Here, characters, namely Gokul and his mother Ashima, they experience dissonance in different ways. They both are held captive, in a state of in betweenness of two cultures. One is India and the other is America. And in the novel Lowland, recites the story of a difficult mother named Gauri, who is infurious with her own child because of her inner dissonance created by a perilous past in India. Gauri is not able to love her own child because she has encountered a very, perilous past in India. So because of this, she's not able to, shed affection on her own child because she considers her child as a representation of the past. So any research which we are undertaking, so it has to be evidentially claimed by the application of a theory. So here I've applied the dialectical theory. The theory states that multiple contradictions, are commonly inherent in every relationship. It clearly tells that there is no relationship which runs very smooth without involving conflicts, be it friendship or romantic relationships, or be it a relationship with your mother. You can never say that you have never encountered a fight with them. So the theory also states, yes, multiple contradictions is common, and Dr. Leslie A. Baxter and W.K. Rowling in 1988 they conceptualized the theory, and incompatibility and opposition are its earlier typology. But later, what happened? Many dialectical analysts like Ronald Adley, Lawrence, and Russell assigned another component into the theory, which is integration and separation. So what happens is the characters in the novels, owing to the tussle in their identity and relationship, which is triggered due to cultural conflict or cross-cultural tensions, exhibit either incompatibility or opposition. So let's see what is incompatibility. Only then you will understand this better. So incompatibility is a state, where two people cannot coexist. You cannot make even little adjustments. For example, you and your mother. Your mother's taste would differ from your own taste in your dresses. Okay, so this is incompatibility where you can overcome this in the long run. But what about opposition? Opposition is where one side dominates the other side completely, neutralizing their preferences, or you can even call negating the other side. Okay, for example, imagine you are married to a very dominant husband or wife. He or she is not giving any value to your choices in life. Can you just get along with them smoothly day after day? It's quite impossible, isn't it? So that is what we see here. One is incompatibility, where we are not able to get along, in our interest in various areas. But opposition is where one side neutralizes the preferences of the other side completely. So, in accordance with the theory, that is, cultural conflicts lead to incompatibility and opposition, which in turn leads to separation. So if you see, the daughters are incompatible with the mother, or sometimes the daughters even oppose the mother. Gauri is opposing her husband, her own Indian self, and her child Bella. So these are the different tensions, which is existing with the characters. But how can this be resolved? How can reintegration take place? There is disintegration because of identity crisis and disturbance in the relationship realms. But how can reintegration take place is the question. So that is through the recitation of resilience, where the secretive past of the elder generation, it is all rekindled and it is recited to the younger generation. So you may ask me, does telling the past help the children to attain a transformation? Of course it does. When I was going for a counseling session in a hospital, a young woman, okay, she brought her boy, and that boy, in the house was creating a huge ruckus for not having a pet dog. He's capable of studying, but he was not interested in studying. And he, as years passed on, he became very frivolous just for the one reason that he didn't have a pet dog. And I witnessed the doctor giving a counseling, listing about all the sacrifices which the mother made in order to educate this boy. But when he came for the next counseling session, I saw some kind of improvement in him. So this theory, this is what we see in the characters also. So this is evidentially claimed, by the resilience theory. So resilience in psychology, as I told you earlier, is the positive capacity of the people to cope with stress and adversity. So here what happens is the silent secrets of the elder generation is resurrected and recited to the American offsprings of the Asian parents. And the past life of the respective parents and their pangs, it preaches a moral lesson to the younger generation who are so far afflicted with the agony of individual and cultural inconsistencies. So, the mental toughness of the characters, as I told you earlier, is evidentially claimed with the resilience theory. So, resilience is the positive capacity or the hardness which we possess inside our emotional self to encounter stress and struggle. So he was a clinical psychologist who propounded this theory, and he also proposed a resilience model, okay, to interpret his theoretical foundations, where stress or adversity has got the capacity to fragment or disintegrate our life. But reintegration can take place only with the mental toughness which we possess inside us. It's present there defaultly inside each one of us. But many of us, when we fail to excavate this, when we fail to discover this, we lose our mental balance and we all become psychiatric patients. So that is what happens here. God has given this resilience to everyone, okay, without partiality. But many who fail to discover this and exhibit this in their life, they lose their mental balance. So here, what happens is every individual in their journey of life, they undergo stress or adversity, which happens with the characters also. So in the Joy Luck Club, the four mothers, before immigrating to America, they were tormented in China due to gender discrimination, male domination, war, and its ravages. Even it was also miserable marriages and economic dearth. In the case of Kitchen Guard's wife, Winnie was, oppressed to a very great extent by the ordeals of a vicious husband called Wenfu. So Wenfu was a boorish brute who plundered the physical and emotional well-being of Winnie. And Cuban in the novel, that is the Hundred Secret Senses, exhibits impeccable resilience against the dominance of the American culture, and she also, fights without giving up against the antagonism of her Americanized sister Olivia. Ashima, unlike the other characters, so Ashima is a unique character here who was not tormented by her past, but her present life in America is what is disturbing her greatly. Her individuality was disintegrated due to the divisions in Indian and American culture. Gauri in the lowland, she was caught in the cruel clutches of her past. That is the 1970s revolutionary India. That cruel past, it disintegrated her drastically, and it also repressed her identity. So, though impending evils threatened these women, they did not give up. What they did is they resolutely stood up to regenerate their ruined lives. So, the rough road, which was taken by these women in their journey of life, shows the right path to their offsprings who were suffering because of identity crisis inside them, which was also disturbing their relationships. So, the recitation of resilience by the elder generation, that is the mysterious past, initiates the miracle of transformation in their life. So, this division, that is the miracle of mysteries, here mysteries refer to the past and miracle refers to the transformation which took place in the individual self and kingship kingdom of the characters. The transformation here is twofold. Okay, it occurs inside the elder generation as well as the younger generation. It dispels the darkness of dissonance, and it also paves way for a better understanding between the mothers and daughters, and siblings and parents and children. So, in all the five novels, a kind of understanding creeps inside their relationships. It also rebuilds their identity. It also gives them space to negotiate a new identity that is not wholly American or completely Asian, but somewhere in the middle called as the Asian American identity. So this process of transformation, it's evidentially claimed with the concept of catharsis, so which has three stages: realization, purification, and purgation. So let's see who undergoes realization, who falls under the category of purification, and who, on the other hand, purges them of all the dark secrets which is hidden inside them. So the daughters in the Joyla Club and the kitchen god's wife realize the true self of their own mothers and their pangs in the past. So the painful past, which was a mystery to the daughters, swept away their identity and cultural clashes, and Olivia, in the Hundred Secret Senses, attains an enormous realization about her own self, her sister, Qian, her husband, as well as China, after encountering her past in person. So, what is this encountering the past in person? Uh, Qian takes Olivia back to China, and all the stories which she told her in America, Olivia was able to witness that in her real life when she returned back to China. Finally, she realizes that she has taken a rebirth and accepts her Chinese as well as American identity. So finally, what happens? She steps out of her unadulterated American notions and she surrenders to the belief of reincarnation. Okay, so which is put forward by her sister, clearing her dissonance inside her individual self and with her husband Simon. And Gokul Ganguly, on the other hand, is is acquainted with the mystery surrounding his name, and he is also taken aback, or he is wonderstruck by the resilience of his mother in an alien soil. So as I told you earlier, Ashima rejected everything which was American, but later as years passed a new realization crept inside her. So Gokul, on the other hand, was also influenced by the resilience exhibited by his mother in an alien soil. So, this in turn cleared his path of all the troubles, and it paved way for self realization and reconciliation. He also realized the true legacy of his name and the magnitude of the long revealed, long hidden mystery. And Ashima, on the other hand, comprehends a completely different mystery which miraculously transcends her boundaries. So after the demise of her husband, this was so long mysterious to her. But after her husband's death only, she realizes the mystery that it was not India, but it was America, where she had grown, to love her husband, where she begot children, and she realizes it was America, the place which presented her with the family. So now what happens is a new transformation creeps inside Ashima, where she embraces America as well as India. So Bella in the lowland realizes the pathos in her mother's life and finally initiates an attempt of reconciliation with her. So characters like the Joyla Club mothers, Winnie and Ashok, they all cleanse themselves by reciting the long preserved past. But characters like Gauri, Kuvan, and Subhash, they evacuating the dark secrets which was oppressing them for years. So you all know there's considerable difference between purification and purgation. Purification is cleansing, but purgation, on the other hand, according to Aristotle, after witnessing a tragedy, we all feel relieved. So having released our emotions, uh, our feelings is also refined and it takes a new birth. So wherein it attains a new nobling form. So this is the case with these three characters, that is Gauri, Kuvan, and Subhash. So here, the characters they pass through a pathway of perils, packed with darkness of dissonance, which demands them or triggers them or to recite their resilience and reawaken their mysteries to meet the miracle of reconciliation with their relationships and attain identity. And afterwards, what happened? They head start a new journey towards a new dawn, embracing hope to encounter a better tomorrow. So here I'm concluding my presentation. So these, if you are interested in Asian American literature and in these, and if you have any interest in doing a research on these two authors, these are the themes where you can prolong with your study. That is familial relationships, Asian culture and tradition, or you can undertake a psychological study of all the characters, female characters, and you can even do a comparative study of the short fictions of both the writers. So, if you are interested in undertaking a study, these are the must refer books, that is Asian American literature books. Uh, then, if you are willing to incorporate theory, you can make use of the beginning theory book by Peter Barry. It has got all general theories. So, I'm concluding my presentation here. I thank the INLIT Academy members and Ronald sir for giving me this opportunity. I'm open to questions now.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Uh,
Thank you.
if you have any questions, please post it in the chat box. Friends, if you have questions, you can just post it in the chat box and ma'am will be answering them. Okay, so before people ask you some questions, can I ask a question to you, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Sure. Go ahead.
Ma'am, you were talking about microaggression.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Do you think uh, is it possible that it's being done in India? Is the it's I mean they do it in India? Is it possible?
Yes, yes, of course, we do that in India too. Yeah,
Mhm.
many at times, we do it unconsciously also. So when
Yes.
you see a poor guy or a poor beggar on the street, we do insult him telling, okay, that the beggar demands 10 rupees instead of 1 rupee. That is also one way of microaggression where you marginalize one community just because you consider them not fit for the society. So it happens anywhere. That's what I told you in the presentation. It's not only in America, it can be attributed against any marginalized people, even LGBT people or the poor sector in a society also.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there's
Thank
another question. Can you please give a comparison of Chinese and Indian cultures? Is there any?
Uh, yes, yes. When I was undertaking this study, I was, though India and China appear to be opponent countries, there are a lot of similarities in cultures like tea, paper, the customs which we follow, the traditions. Maybe our food, habits differ from them, but they also assert importance to tradition and customs. And if you see the Chinese people eating, they sit down and only eat. They don't use a dining table like how we Indians do. And there are a lot of, where China's culture and India's culture interlap greatly.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So, for any more questions, you can just post it up. So, if they're gonna ask before that, I'll ask another question to you, ma'am. So,
Yes,
you
sir.
said Aristotle and all these people. I mean, you were talking about catharsis.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
what happens? There are three stages: realization, purification, all these things. Uh,
Yes.
do you think all these immigrants will also go through shock? Do you think cultural shock is also some kind of catharsis?
Yes, of course. Cultural shock is also some kind of catharsis. Just take this example. If you're going to a new workplace and you are dominated there to the extreme by your peers, you lose your identity there. You'll not be in a position to exhibit who you are. So, after some time, it will take time for you to go through a realization, introspect what is happening inside you, and finally set things up. So, this is also the same case, like how you asked with the immigrants too. So did I answer your question, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. I don't think we are getting more questions, so I think we'll conclude, ma'am. And we learned a lot about this journey and about the two Asian American writers. And we really thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you
it
so
was
much
awesome,
for
ma'am.
giving me this opportunity, sir. I also thank the INLIT Academy members. Thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much.
And one small thing, ma'am.
Yes,
The
sir.
faith and religion both are also coinciding. A ma'am has asked about that. Is it true?
Yes, of course. Faith and religion, they interlap in many ways. So you
Okay, ma'am.
cannot say that a faith is different and religion is a different sector. Only if you, every religion for that matter, be it Muslims or Christians or Hinduism, whatever it is, the main crux of the religion is faith. You are believing in somebody. So in So the essence of every religion is faith, and we are not different.
Okay, ma'am. So Sindhu ma'am is asking a question. How could one manage cultural stress with these themes, opposition and incompatibility? Because we
I
are
don't think that, one cannot manage cultural stress with these themes, but you have to encounter that, okay? And you yourself has to devise a way in order to find that with your resilience. That is what I told you. It's present inside you, but many of us, we don't take a discovery or we don't excavate what resilience is. We just get scared of things, and we are not in a position to face struggles or fears. So if we learn to face our fears, I think we can manage any kind of stress, not only cultural stress.
okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for the presentation. We learned a lot. And finally, I would like to thank all the participants who spent your valuable time out here. And please do support us, subscribe, and share this channel as well. And a special thanks to Vignesh sir for all the graphic designs. And also, we thank Beulah ma'am for the editorial support. And once again, have a great day. Thank you so much. Now, we'll be posting feedback forms. Please fill it up in half an hour's time and finish it up. Uh, Actually, Raji ma'am is clarifying. She just says that it's faith and religion that is similar in Chinese and India. So that is the thing, ma'am. She had asked.
Yes, 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 of course. They also have faith, like how we, present food products, food products for the ancestors. They also celebrate a festival called as the Ghost Festival. So they also have faith. They exhibit the same faith like how we do in India too.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So, participants, please
Thank
fill
you,
out
sir.
the feedback forms, and only for half an hour it will be live. And thank you for coming for this session. Thank you so much.